So I just finished this book, literally like 5 minutes ago. This is The Veiled Throne by Ken Liu. This is the third book in the Dandelion Dynasty series by Ken Liu. It is an epic fantasy series, blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to tell you everything about it. All I will say is that normally, when I make a video talking about a book, I put a little bit more thought into it. Sometimes I write a script. Sometimes I write down a bunch of notes and bullet points to get to. However, sometimes you finish something and you immediately feel the need to talk about it. So in lieu of all that, I am here just to tell you that this book is incredible and that you should read it. And you should read the two that come before it, because it won't make much sense otherwise, right? If you don't know who Ken Liu is a science fiction and fantasy author who's had a lot of success in short fiction. He has two collections. One of them is The Paper Menagerie, and the other one is Hidden Girl and Other Stories. If you're a sci-fi nerd like me and you've read The Three Body Problem, you might also know that he translated some of those books into English from Chinese, specifically the first one and the third one, which, if we're being honest, the translation on the second one is a little... So he's doing some good work. I've got some of his stuff up here. He also has worked on translating Chinese short fiction to English in these collections. One of them is Invisible Planets, and the other one is Broken Stars. Both of those are very cool as well. I came across Ken Liu's work at first through my mom, actually. This was during the pandemic, and she just kind of saw the book recommended online and was just like, hey, you should check this out. I'm going to read it too. This is a little personal, but it ended up being one of the last books that we read together and got to chat about before she passed. So I have a soft spot for Ken Liu in general. His short fiction kind of runs the gamut. There's a bunch of stuff that is very sci-fi, very nerdy, very tech focused. And then you have other ones that are much more human and kind of deal with the fantasy aspect of things. I guess the main takeaway from Ken Liu's writing, though, is that he, kind of in a similar way to Ted Chiang, is super efficient. He has a real economy of words, and pretty much every sentence you're reading doesn't feel wasted. And it's super interesting that he went from writing this meticulously crafted short fiction to his first series of proper novels, and they're all this big. They're all just door stoppers. For context, I think this is not even the longest one in the series. I'm pretty sure the fourth book, Speaking Bones, is even longer than this one. And I should say too, I'm not really someone who reads huge books like this too often. I've kind of honestly made exceptions for this series, and then I'm reading the Stormlight Archive right now per my girlfriend's suggestion. So in general, I like a good 400 page book. That's kind of the sweet spot for me. I also love novellas. I've read a ton of Banana Yoshimoto, and those tend to be pretty small too. However, I've really enjoyed this series despite the length. And I think it's really cool to see an author that has been tested in all these other areas with translation and short fiction kind of get to flex his muscles in a way with these books. I will give you a little bit of a description of what's going on here, just so you're not completely clueless and I'm not just talking about nothing. This book is the third book in the Dandelion Dynasty series by Ken Liu. There is The Grace of Kings, which is the first book, The Wall of Storms, the second book, The Veiled Throne, the third book, and then Speaking Bones, the fourth book. I read The Grace of Kings back in 2021, I think, and I'm not going to lie, it was pretty challenging. It is a big book, but the reason it was challenging is more that it kind of read like a history textbook to me in a lot of ways. The story essentially follows, in that first book, these two kind of upstart rebel heroes from different parts of this continent that exists in this world, and it shows their kind of simultaneous rise to be these powerful figures in society, and their kind of bond and friendship that they make with each other, and then their eventual kind of separation and conflict that they have with each other. There's some really thrilling moments in that first book, but it is a little dry. And even though I love Ken Liu, getting through that book was a little bit of a slog. It picks up near the end, and there is this sort of sense of like a sweeping epic narrative going on, which made it worth it for me, for sure. But it wasn't really until I got to the second book, The Wall of Storms, that like I understood why he was laying things out in the way that he was. And I won't get into any of the specific like plot details of The Wall of Storms or The Veiled Throne, but all I will say is that the characters that are set up in The Grace of Kings, you kind of follow their like lineage, and like time passes within this like royal construct, and you see the way like the ruling power transitions over the course of like 20-30 years going into these other books. And I don't know, like thinking of that first book as a history textbook, I don't think, now that I've read two of the other ones, is like much of a diss. It's actually more of like I see why you had to do that. Sure, maybe it could have been a little bit more like fun to read. I definitely could have gone that route, but it almost seems like this story that he's in the middle of with the second book and third book and now the fourth one, which he has intended for this third and fourth book to kind of be seen as like one cohesive narrative. It kind of feels like he had to just like get all of that first book out of his system to sort of like set up the world that this stuff exists in, so that he could get to the stuff he like actually wants to talk about. From my recollection too, this was originally only supposed to be a 3-book series, but he started writing the third one and it turned into something even bigger and bolder than he imagined he would write when he started out, and it got split into 2 books. And I can see why, because again, without getting into the specifics, there's like a point maybe 2/3 of the way through this book where it takes a pretty stark turn into something completely different for a little while, and it kind of took me off guard. But with that said, like once I was there, I was so happy, and it was really cool seeing him kind of go off on this tangent for like 200-300 pages. And yeah, I don't know, I've read so much Ken Liu at this point where I just know to kind of trust the process. I kind of talked about that a little bit with Brandon Sanderson when I finished The Way of Kings. That was a book where like the first, I don't know, half of the book I was really struggling with just kind of like, where is this all going, and blah 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 blah. And I do think that Ken Liu's books aren't quite as top heavy or bottom heavy as Brandon Sanderson books are. Like there's compelling stuff all the way through this. But I don't know, that's also with an entire book, the whole first book in this series kind of being like a preemptive thing for the rest of it. Like, I don't know, if you don't have the patience for it, I don't blame you, but I do implore you to stick it out, because everything past that has been just beautiful. I really do want to get into the particulars of this story for anyone who has read it and wants to kind of talk about it with me, but I think I'm going to save that for when I finish the fourth book, and I might do kind of a crazy long video talking about the entire Dandelion Dynasty. And I don't know, I might even try to interview him, honestly. That would be pretty cool. But yeah, this was really only meant to be a quick video advocating for you to read the Dandelion Dynasty, which I think you should. If you want to kind of dip your toes in with Ken Liu first, I would go pick up the paper Menagerie, because it's just beautiful. There's stories in there that'll make you cry. There's ones that'll kind of blow your mind with everything he's talking about. And I don't know, man. Like, Ken Liu's been one of my favorite authors for quite a while now, and I don't know. I'm excited for whatever he does next. He has a new series that was recently announced that's going to come out next year, and I think also some new short stories as well. So yeah, if you watch my videos and you trust my opinions on whatever, Ken Liu's like my boy. So yeah, check his stuff out. Aside from that, I'm wrapping up this year just like everybody else. I am going to do like my favorite things of 2024 video sometime soon, but it's the holidays and I've been kind of taking it easy a little bit. So yeah, I'll be back soon. Yeah, hope everyone has a happy holidays and a good rest of your year, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.